Today's First Alert afternoon weather update is brought to you by Lockhart Roofing.
Happy Friday, First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips hanging out with you today. Of course, we are getting so close to the weekend. We are only hours away, and we do still have that snow chance. So I'm glad that you're joining me. Of course, we'll be talking about what you can expect here for the weekend, and we'll also be kind of looking at the latest data. So we're really going to be focused on the snow here for the next couple of minutes to kind of talk about that. But I am also going to be highlighting some of our high school football games tonight because we are going to be watching for just a few sprinkles for some of our games. So let's just kind of dive right into the forecast. Let's start with what we're currently working with, and that's temperatures. Those are currently sitting into the low to mid 50s. We've seen a better rebound today than what we were even working with yesterday. So we're finding that a lot of our temperatures right now are sitting at 52 for Saginaw, Flint. We're at 49 yet in Bad Axe and Caseville, 55 in Gladwin and Clare, and 48 into Houghton Lake. So we are still seeing that a lot of us have been able to warm up. Of course, our northern counties coming across the thumb, we've been seeing that it's a little bit cooler there. Some of the games that we are going to be watching, of course, the game of the week is Unionville-Sebewaing. They are playing Harbor Beach, and this is going to be a matchup, of course, in the thumb. We're watching this one. We're planning on keeping it dry, though, but the cloud cover, that's going to be holding on for us. We've been seeing the clouds kind of stick around here for much of the afternoon. We were hoping to kind of get some drier air in, but Lake Michigan had another idea. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But as we look at our forecast for the game of the week, we still will find that we have still some breezy conditions for some of our matchups. So we will find that at kickoff, temperatures right at 50 degrees, but that doesn't last. I would still have the rain, or not the rain gear, but the winter coats packed because we do have temperatures that are going to be into the 40s for this game. Now, another one that we're going to be watching is East Lansing. They're headed to Dow tonight. We are going to have temperatures here that are just in the upper 40s for kickoff. We're still keeping the cloud cover, but one thing that I am watching, kind of getting close and a little bit closer to the Tri-Cities, is that we do have the chance for an isolated sprinkle. So it's really isolated. That chance is not necessarily high, but I don't want you getting to the game saying, I wish I would have had my raincoat, because we do just have that slight chance if that's able to develop. Another game that we're going to be watching that is going to be Beal City. They are going to be playing Saginaw Novell tonight. They're going to be in Beal City for this game, and because of that, we do have that isolated sprinkle chance also for this game. Temperatures that kick off to be into the upper 40s, falling into the mid 40s later on. Again, that chance is going to be pretty low, but we do just have that possibility on the table. Now, some of our other games, you can actually see the full list at WNEM.com, but some of our other games, we are just able to have those mostly cloudy conditions in, and hopefully we can keep it dry. When we look at our sky tracker, we are going to see that we've had the cloud cover, and what we are watching, even for the rain chances kind of coming in and to be a little more isolated, is going to kind of be just this energy with the remainder of the cloud cover. So what we have into the UP, we're watching to see if that's here by 7 o'clock, and even some of these showers, you can kind of just see that moisture boundary setting up there. Now, we did have some drier air cut in, so Southwest Michigan, it looks like they are seeing some sunshine. Us, on the other hand, we are missing out, but we are going to try to see at least some of that cloud coverage break apart. I'm going to try to zoom in here and see if we can see. So it looks like Gratiot County might have a little bit of that sun coming through, even into Midland, looking like we at least have a break in the clouds. It's definitely overcast into the thumb and across Genesee County. So we are seeing a little bit of a break in the cloud cover, so enjoy what little sunshine you can get on this Friday, but we are still going to continue to kind of watch further north to see any of this moisture, how it survives coming over the lake, and what that means for us. So you can see it's not even really put together. A lot of this is even just lake effect that we're seeing towards Marquette, but we'll just be watching. You can even see just a few sprinkles trying to get picked up here around the Gaylord area. So we are going to be watching that. Of course, if you're going to some of our games, check the First Alert weather app before you go. So that's going to be a pretty helpful tool to know what you need to pack for some of our games. But again, winter coats, I would take those to be comfortable, especially with the breeze that times that can kind of add a little extra chill to the air. So that's what we are watching here as we go throughout the next couple of hours for our Friday night plans. Now, we are still on track to see that snow chance here for the weekend. We did kind of get the full suite of the morning data in, and then we already have some of the afternoon data already in. So I am going to take a quick break, kind of reset to make sure everything's ready to go, and we will be right back to talk about that weekend snow chance coming up in about 60 seconds. Welcome back. First Alert meteorologist Diane Phillips, ready to kind of dive into the snow details that we have in our forecast. So I kind of created a little bit of a timeline here for us and what we can expect going into the weekend. We are going to find that the first half of Saturday is dry. It isn't closer towards bedtime Saturday that we start to have this system come in. Now this is the low pressure system that we've been watching to be bringing us a chance for rain and snow in the forecast. So some of the timelines that we're looking at, the start time is still a little bit in question because there is some drier air around. So we are kind of watching that time frame for it to start to get close to mid-Michigan to be around 9 p.m. to midnight. But even during the night, while a lot of us are asleep, we are going to find that we have that rain and or snow because we really find temperatures dropping going into Sunday morning, getting at least close to freezing, if not dropping below it. And that's when we are going to transition from rain to snow. So we will be finding that we kind of have that mix here during the night and even going into around 5 a.m. because that's when during the night it moves into the area. I'm really kind of watching that 5 o'clock hour because that's kind of when we have that transition really getting over to snow. We're going to be just a few hours ahead of sunrise at that time frame, and that's going to allow for us to have some cooler air. So that's when we really see our temperatures kind of drop to their lowest levels. And this is also where we could start to see some of our light accumulations on some of those high elevated or cooler surfaces. So if you do still have that patio table that's out, or even on your deck, or even some of the grass, you may kind of notice that some of that snow is trying to stick. But as we go a little bit closer towards noon, we'll kind of see the system lift out, and then going into the afternoon and evening is when we are going to transition and start monitoring for lake effect. So this is going to be coming off of Lake Huron with this system, and we will be finding that that lake effect can also not only be snow showers, but also rain showers really close to the water. Just because our Great Lakes water temperatures, when I was checking some of the buoys in Lake Huron, the readings were around 49 degrees. So that's going to be enough to where we can see some rain, but as it runs into that colder air, it will transition into snow. So we're watching really those temperatures closely and even kind of that distance because that's really going to be what we're having to monitor now with kind of a more southerly solution. So I want to step into the hour by hour. Here for the rest of today, you can see it's trying to be optimistic on bringing us some sunshine. I'm not totally convinced that we'll all have it here in time before the sun does set around 5:20, but we are still going to be seeing that those clouds do hang around for us here tonight. As we go into the middle of the night, you'll see that it's still pretty quiet. So Saturday morning, a little bit of cloud cover, some bands kind of coming off of that northerly wind, but we do have some sunshine to start. So we will be finding that we're still hovering just above that freezing mark still at this point. We try to keep it above freezing for much of the day on Saturday, but the cloud cover just continues to build in as we go. So if you're maybe going to be going to a friend's house, maybe already getting a jump on some holiday shopping, we are going to see that your Saturday plans are in really good shape. So we don't have too many weather concerns. But as we get a little bit closer, so here we are 9-10 o'clock, you can start to see a little development just on the kind of that northwest corner here by the First Alert weather logo. That's when we do start to see some of that rain and snow kind of developing. So this is kind of that time frame where we're really watching the storm system come in. As we go through the middle of the night, you'll kind of see that it's a little bit quiet for us, but then around 5 o'clock, it does start to pick up. So what we have seen is that the low pressure system has been fluctuating anywhere from about central Indiana to about the Indiana-Kentucky border. And what that difference is in just that few little miles is really if what we see on the northern side of the system. So because we have started to see a little bit closer towards the Kentucky border, that means that it is going to kind of keep a lot of that rain and snow chance further south. So that's where we're going to be kind of finding the better ingredients is a little bit closer towards about 94 or even towards the state line to where we'll then be on the northerly edge of this, so that is still going to be bringing us a chance for some rain and some snow, but you will see that it doesn't maybe get all the way across mid-Michigan. So we do kind of see that better chance closer towards I-69. So if you're in Owasso, Flint, Lapeer, Grand Blanc, make sure you're kind of keeping an eye to the conditions and really watching where this storm goes. Of course, First Alert meteorologist Stone Schaefer, he's going to be watching this one closely going into Saturday night and Sunday morning. So we are going to continue to kind of see not only that snow, but also there is a little bit of rain here into the thumb. So we're watching closely to see kind of that transition between liquid and frozen precipitation because we will have to go through that adjustment period here. Through the next couple of hours, as that temperature really starts to drop around 6-7 o'clock, that's when we reach our coldest lows. That's when we see kind of a full transition over to snow for the most part. But another thing to keep in mind is now that we are seeing that track to be a little more southerly, one component component is really going to be northeast winds. So we're still at this point not quite seeing it. We're having a little bit of setup here through the bay, but as we go throughout the morning, kind of that coverage that we have along I-69, that's going to continue to kind of pivot out. So that's what we're seeing here. I'm going to kind of just move it back and forth. If you keep your eyes closer towards Flint, Lapeer, Sandusky, that's kind of the last little bit of our morning snow. So that's going to be out of here by the time we get to lunch. But what's already kind of building on the backside, because these low pressure systems rotate counterclockwise, you'll kind of have that wind coming up over Lake Huron, and that's why it's funneling into the bay. So that's already why we are seeing even a little bit of lake effect Sunday morning. But it really starts to pick up for us as we go into Sunday afternoon. So really at this point, what we see is a lot of lake effect. But you'll also find that we have some pink in there around the bay. As I had mentioned, Great Lakes water temperatures for Lake Huron specifically are sitting right around 49 degrees. So that means that that's enough for rain. So I wouldn't be surprised in this lake effect setup if we see locations, let's say Essexville, that you see a little bit of rain. But you may find that your friends getting a little bit closer towards, say, Bay City or even into Saginaw, they may see snow by the time we get a little bit distance away from the bay. So we're really talking just a little bit of mileage, and what we could see could very much different between your house and then your friend's house. So there is still a lot of components. We see that same setup here in northern Tuscola and western Huron County. So if you're in Caseville, Unionville, Seaboing areas, you may find that you have very much different weather compared to maybe what your friends are seeing in Bad Axe. So there is going to be a lot of variation here by just a couple of miles, which makes that so difficult to forecast when we're only talking about 20 miles difference on what we could be seeing. So as we go into Sunday afternoon, just kind of keep in mind that the lake effect is going to really start to build for us. Now, even as we go throughout the day, you will be monitoring kind of some of those bands coming across Saginaw and Shiawassee counties. So we'll be seeing how well that holds together. One thing to keep in mind, though, is when this lake effect is going, we're also going to have the sun that is up during the day. So that solar radiation is going to kind of help to take care of some of the snow accumulation. So we are going to find that we do still have that snow coming down potentially, but it may not really be adding up to all that much, especially with ground temperatures. We talked about those yesterday. We're still going to be seeing those that are going to be sitting into the 40s. I can actually bring that map up for you. Got to zoom in here because we have a lot of sensors across the country. But even when we were looking, a lot of these are still sitting into those 40s. We have seen a couple of these stations drop, so we'll be watching pretty closely to see what some of these numbers are. But you can see kind of 45, 44, some 42, some 46s. So it really just is a little bit variable. So even it looks like 50 is that reading there into Flint. So we're just going to be watching ground temperatures pretty closely. Now, as I had mentioned, we are going to be talking potentially of some of that kind of snow trying to stick on those high elevated surfaces. So we will be talking about any accumulation potential after this real quick break. And we are back. So we are going to be talking about the potential of will that snow stick, because I did see some of you in the comments saying, okay, what's going to stick? What's going on here? So we are going to find when we look at our snow predictor that we do have a little bit of contouring here. So we do have kind of the potential on cool, elevated surfaces for maybe some of that to try to kind of stick, but it's still going to be, especially going into Sunday afternoon with temperatures just slightly above freezing, and also that solar radiation, even that sun kind of coming through those clouds will make a difference. So with ground temperatures in the morning and also seeing some rainfall out potentially ahead, something to keep in mind is that if we do have rain ahead, as that snow falls, it's going to fall onto a wet surface and puddles, and it will melt on contact in that situation. Also, with ground temperatures in the low to mid 40s, also we expect a lot of melt on pavement. Now, you may find that in the grass, maybe you'll remember Halloween of 2023, we had some snow that night. We had some snow that was sticking into the grass, but it didn't really stick to the pavement. So that's kind of the difference that what we're going to see. You're going to find that some of us or some spots may have something that's able to kind of stick and hold on to because it's a lot cooler compared to what maybe the pavement's going to be able to allow for that snow to stick to. So what we are going to be wanting to first alert you to is bridges and overpasses Saturday night into Sunday morning, and then kind of throughout the day on Sunday, keep in mind, but just remember bridges and overpasses, you have all that open surface around the top, the bottom, the sides. So that's where we can get that cold air around. So that's why we see those bridges and overpasses really cool down quite quickly. So while you're driving, when you see those signs that say bridge may be icy, that's the reminder that you need to be watching, because you may run into some spots that could be a little bit slick because they're cooler. Another thing is like the Milwaukee Bridge. That one, of course, is going to be a little more elevated, so it's able to cool out a little bit better. So just kind of watch for some of those changing road conditions on where we could have some cooler areas. Again, elevated bridges and overpasses. The other thing is that if you still have maybe your patio table that's still on the deck, you haven't put it away yet, you are going to find that that's pretty cool. It doesn't have its own heat source. It's going to cool out really quick. So anything that snow-wise falls on that is going to be able to hold it. Also, there's going to be the snowboard at the airport. That's going to be kind of measuring the snow that actually falls from the ground. So there's going to be a difference on the snow that falls on a surface that doesn't melt, and then the snow that falls on a surface and does melt. So you're going to see a lot of variations when you wake up Sunday morning on what we have that didn't stick and what did stick. So it really is just going to depend on what it's falling on and what the temperature of that object is. So your car is another one that might be cooling out quite a bit, and that it means that you might need to maybe get the snow brush out, kind of scrape a little bit of that off to get road ready Sunday morning. So there's still some variations where if it falls on cooler conditions, you may find that. Now we are going to be keeping an eye to roadways, but right now MDOT, our very own James Felton, he was talking with them yesterday. So they're going to be monitoring the situation. Of course, they're ready if need be, but right now with our forecast, it doesn't look likely that we will be needing to monitor for that. But we will find, again, those ground temperatures, we're seeing those to be above freezing. We will be tracking to see if the snow can stick to grass, to grassy surfaces. But even then, as we go throughout the day on Sunday, we may find what actually sticks to the ground. Let's say we get some snow and it sticks to the ground around 5 a.m. It may not even be here till 8 a.m. So we may find that it quickly does a little bit of a disappearing act. So I'm not anticipating that we're going to have big piles of snow. I think it's going to be tricky for some of us to even have a need to get that shovel out. So of course, we'll be watching this if anything changes, because if that low pressure system starts to come back north, we may need to make some adjustments. But right now, we are going to find that it is pretty limited on what will actually stick to the ground. And of course, we have kind of those differences where it depends what it falls to. Now, if this was January, then we would definitely be talking about it sticking to kind of every surface, pavement, grass, cars, you name it. That's when we would be worried about it. But we are going to find that with it still kind of being a little bit on the mild side, headed into our first snow, that we are going to be monitoring to see how well it sticks to some of those conditions. One thing, though, that I do also want to stress here is that as we go throughout our Sunday, I'm going to push this through a little bit, we do start to see a little more banding. So as the lake effect does set up on Sunday, I wouldn't be surprised if we do start to see potentially, depending if we're looking at rain or snow coming off of Lake Huron, that we may find some bands that do set up. So we'll be watching that pretty closely, because that's where we could accrue some minor accumulations, but that would be in locations closer towards the bay. So towards the Tri-Cities, northern Tuscola County, throughout Huron County, we would be watching, and then to see how far south that those can travel. So we are just going to be kind of keeping an eye on snow bands, because those can set up and just vary a couple of miles difference to where you see something and then your neighbor sees something completely different. So there's still a lot of very small fine-tuned details when we're talking mile to mile that are still going to have to be figured out as we get closer. But still, when we're kind of looking at that medium-sized picture here, we are kind of looking at the morning portion of the system to not really be too much of an accumulation concern, but it would be into the later afternoon that we would be monitoring for any lake effect to see if that can get going and at a strong enough speed to where we could have that potentially override some ground temperatures, but we would need a heavy snowfall rate, and that doesn't necessarily look to be lining up for us. So there's still some opportunities for us to have some snow that can try to stick, but the overall grand picture is that it's not really going to stick, or if it does, it won't last all that long. So the chances of it sticking are a lot lower than what we're seeing that it to be kind of hanging around for quite a while. So just kind of keep in mind the conditions, but overall this looks manageable. I know a lot of us are professionals. We've been through a Michigan winter, so this is just kind of that early winter taste. I know we're all familiar with November snow. Another thing, though, that I do want to talk about is that the cold air that comes in to bring us this snow chance is still going to be hanging around into early next week. So we're going to have quite a cool start on Monday and Tuesday mornings. We could have wind chills that are into the teens. So that means that kids waiting at the bus stop will need jackets. They will want gloves. They will want their hats. We also are going to find that if we do have some damp spots from Sunday night going into Monday morning, we could run into some icy kind of patches on roadways, depending if we have like a refreeze going on. Again, it really depends on ground temperatures, but if everything's able to cool out quickly, we may find that we have that refreeze option there, especially on untreated surfaces. So there's a lot to kind of watch to see how how Sunday plays out and what that's going to mean for us as we go into Monday and Tuesday. But highs, we are going to be finding those that are going to be into the 30s for early next week. So as you can see there, that's about 15 degrees below normal. So it's definitely going to be giving you maybe some of that holiday vibe with the cooler air. But it's definitely going to be feeling like winter outside as we go into next week. But it does rebound a little bit. Let's look at some of those feels like temperatures. Oh, it looks like the model data is not quite, there we go. Didn't quite reach that far, so let's go back to 7 a.m. because that's really when a lot of us are headed out the door. You'll see that our future feels like temperatures are those wind chills into the teens. So that's why it is going to be a pretty cool morning. So we want to first alert you to be prepared as you start your brand new week out the door. That cold air is going to be a little bit bitey outside. So make sure that you are dressed accordingly to kind of handle that. So we'll be watching for those conditions going into Monday morning and even Tuesday morning. As we look ahead for our lows tonight, we will find that a lot of us are going to be hanging just above that freezing mark, maybe getting close, but we do have some spots like Houghton Lake, West Branch, Oscoda, and Clare. You can see some of those 20s starting to come in, so this is kind of a little more of a typical night that we can expect here tonight, but we do have the cloud cover, so that might be able to hold some insulation for us too. Our first alert 7-day forecast, you are going to find that our temperatures today, we have those 50s, tomorrow lower 40s. That number's kind of been dropping back with the colder air coming in, and that's when we introduce the 30s. Starting on Sunday, going into Monday and Tuesday, we rebound Wednesday. That's when we see those 40s coming back in. We stay there for Thursday. We are going to be tracking, though, still that morning rain. We're kind of done with that for today. A little bit breezy. Isolated showers again. We are looking at those Friday night lights forecasts, and those are also on the TV5 First Alert weather app. But as we go into Saturday, it's really kind of the nighttime that we'll have to be watching for that rain and snow arriving, and then we'll be tracking that throughout the day on Sunday. And even going into Monday and Tuesday, we'll still find some lake effect hanging around the region before we kind of see a little bit of a lift out and getting back into those 40s. So it still seems like a pretty active pattern. Of course, we're going to have updates today at 4 o'clock. Also, that First Alert weather app is going to be a great tool to have here through the weekend. So I know First Alert meteorologist Stone Schaefer, he's going to be providing the latest information and kind of what he's watching if we see any changes or shifts of this low pressure. So make sure you're connected with him on the First Alert weather app here through the weekend. That is a great tool to have. But again, we are going to be having our newscast today at 4 o'clock. And also First Alert meteorologist Chris Eastlick is going to be hanging around tonight on the First Alert desk at 9 p.m. So he's going to have some of that new evening data rolling in at that time frame. So if you have some plans this weekend or you want to know how the snow is going to be shaking out, make sure you are joining him here on YouTube, Facebook, WNEM.com. That's going to be the best spots that you can kind of connect with your First Alert weather team. And also don't forget, we do have our Roku and Fire Stick channels, and we're also on Android and Apple TV if you use those products as well. So make sure that you are connecting with us, especially here going into the winter season. We'll be watching, of course, those First Alert details very closely. But hopefully you have a wonderful Friday evening and a great weekend as well. We'll be seeing you back here next week at 2 o'clock.
Thank you for joining us. Today's stream has been brought to you by Lockhart Roofing.